Welcome to the Real Estate Show with Pat Lopez, where we talk everything real estate. Today, my guest is Scott Einbinder of Scott Einbinder Consulting. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. Okay, so we're going to get into your consulting business, your coaching business, your events, all that kind of stuff. We'll even talk about the class action lawsuit, what people need to prepare themselves with. But before we get into all that, tell me, how did you get started in real estate?
So, I say I've been in this industry for 59 years, and I'm 59 years old.
Right.
I got into this business because I was very lucky. My mother and father were in the real estate business.
Right.
So I was very fortunate where, the two mentors were my folks.
Right.
And my folks also happened to be legends in the business.
Right.
So I was kind of going into a situation where I had two people who had built an amazing company.
Right.
And did things very different. And that's really where I got my exposure to.
Perfect. Okay, so now let me ask you this question. I saw on your website that you've done over 3,000 events, speaking. How did that get started?
So, unlike most trainers in the real estate business and in the mortgage business, but most real estate trainers have never sold a home. And I always found that fascinating when I was in the business.
Right.
I just was shocking. I mean, that's a magic act within itself.
Right.
To train people on something that you've never done. But that's a conversation for another day. So the way I got into it is I had been very kind of fortunate. Grew up in a great family business. That business was sold. I had a lot of good fortune there. I then went into the mortgage business. Built a great company and was acquired. So we both got acquired in my previous firm and that firm as well. I then went back into the real estate business. We started an innovative real estate company called Your Home Direct, YHD. If you were from that area, you would absolutely know who we were. We were very big, very large, doing things very different. We were actually selling homes at 2% with no MLS participation.
Okay.
Everyone hated us, but we were closing 500 homes a week. That aside, I ended up selling my interest in that business, so I was kind of 3 for 3 in the sale department. I was kind of in my late 30s. I wasn't done yet. And a friend of mine asked me to come over. He had about 45 minutes to kill in a sales meeting. He had nothing to talk about. He asked me if I would come over and kind of just tell jokes, dance, do something. I went over and I basically terrorized the 4 or 5 agents in that room, trying to ask them, what are they doing to be successful? How are they doing business? They had no answer. And I basically tried to convince them to quit.
Right.
Long and short of it is, it was a lot of fun. And a couple of days later, I got a phone call from some broker who I did not know up in North Jersey. He called me up and he said, hey, Scott, I heard you just did a seminar in so-and-so's office. And I go, I did?
Yeah.
He goes, what do you charge for that? I made up a number and he goes, okay, can you come next Tuesday? And I'm now starting my 18th year doing this. So the way I got into this was very organic. I took basically what I did and what our firms did to be very, very successful and leverage that into what I do. So unlike a lot of what's out there, which is just kind of like old school stuff, everything that I did was really from practical experience. And so I got into that way and built a great relationship with my clients, and we try to do things very different.
Okay, so clients, like what would be a typical client? You deal with the mortgage industry and the real estate industry.
So the majority of my clients are real estate companies, from all of the major firms down to many single office firms. I work with real estate companies, and why they hire me is they are faced with very real challenges. I am known in this space, I have been known in this space as being an individual who shows agents how to acquire listings outside of one's sphere of influence.
Right.
The problem with the industry is it gives a lot of direction that's often wrong. There's an 85% failure rate in the real estate industry, and they're all going to training.
Right.
Maybe you got to say something. Maybe something wrong with training. So the idea is a lot of agents think that their sphere of influence is going to be kind of the solution to their business. You hear it's all about referrals. I've always had a different attitude. Outside your sphere of influence has unlimited opportunity. But it's not comfortable. Agents aren't comfortable going to for sale by owners and expireds. And that's my area of expertise. So my clients are real estate companies predominantly who look for those unique solutions. And I do it very differently like nobody else. I also work with a handful of other what we call third-party providers who will sometimes retain me as basically part of their value added benefit
Okay.
to their realtor relationships. So that's kind of what my general seminar speaking consulting business is about.
Okay, so you said it's a little bit different. So how would your events look versus, like the standard? What's that
So
difference?
the typical real estate training event today, if it's 90 minutes long, you might get 45 minutes of content and another 45 minutes of them trying to sell you whatever they're selling you. They're selling you coaching services. They're selling you books, tapes, social media, lead gen, all these things that
Right.
sound really good
Right.
if you don't want to work outside your sphere of influence. What my seminars are about are 90 minutes of pure content and strategy. I've got nothing to sell anybody. I don't sell products. I don't have any third-party stuff. And my seminars and my presentations are all about unique selling strategies. It's unique ways to approach predominantly sellers to convince them to want to list their home with you. Now, understand that the real estate business has been built on both buyer agents and seller agents,
Right.
always knowing that listing agents always made the most money. The reason why they make the most money is it requires a different skill set. But many agents have been able to succeed or to survive, in many cases thrive, on the buyer side.
Right.
However, it's an unpredictable way to earn money. So my seminars are filled with not just really good content and things that people say to me all the time. I've never heard this before, but I try to also infuse it with motivation, inspiration, and hopefully a little bit of humor. Hopefully it's good humor. And that's my sauce. My sauce is, my recipe is great content. It's got to be there, mixed with motivation, inspiration, and some humor weaved in. And that's what it is.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing is, you're telling people, to go outside of the box, go talk to expirers or
Yeah.
for sale by owners, those
Right.
kind of things. So that's one of the main portions of
Yeah.
what you speak about.
So
how to do
understand that everyone tells everyone to do this. And that's was always my frustration with current training.
Right.
They always tell you what you should be doing. Who cares? We all know that. It's how to do it.
Right.
How to do it successfully. And then how to overcome the rebuttals that you get when you do it. And that's where I find most training falls short. You watch, YouTube gurus and all these guys, they tell you, oh, you need to time block. You need to, meet 50 people a day. You need to make 80 calls a day. No, 80 calls a day is not the pathway to success. What you say within those 80 calls, the quality of them, your ability to assess and understand
Right.
and really navigate and be strategic with those calls, that's quite frankly what doesn't get taught. Or if it does get taught, it's taught with an antiquated approach. And there's a lot of that. And remember, often the lifeline of a lot of realtors isn't long.
Right.
So a lot of the trainers, they're still selling and talking about antiquated strategies.
Right.
Like for example, with the for sale by owner, you still have trainers telling agents, knock on the door and tell them you have a buyer, or ask them if they would like a buyer, and then you try to flip them to a listing. I mean, all these antiquated strategies that have been around forever that largely don't work. I mean, something will work sometimes,
Right.
but largely these are old. So my house stuff is new, different, progressive, and I think one of the differentiators is that because I do individual coaching, but I do it on a very, very different basis.
Right,
It is not the forefront of my business. I do my individual coaching for two reasons. Of course, there's an economic reason, but the real reason I do it, because it's really not the economics. And I could speak at 2 events and make more money on that than coaching. But I do it because it keeps me involved in the business,
Right.
because I live my real estate life through my coaching clients. And to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of agents who validate all of the strategies that I
Right.
do, and they do it independently. I mean, and again, my business has not been built on helping an agent increase their business by 10 or 20%. My business is built by helping agents, and I have agents and hundreds of them who've increased their business hundreds of percents,
Right.
going from 70,000 a year to 400. Big numbers. And these are agents that are nothing special. They're open-minded. They're willing to try new things. They're adaptive, and that's kind of what I do. But that is not really my business. My business is the business of bringing a different perspective to the industry. to navigate successfully in a rapidly changing environment.
Okay, perfect. So now let me ask you this. I'm sure, hopefully, everybody heard about the class action lawsuits because not everybody has.
Yeah.
How is that changing, what you're talking about,
Yeah.
if it is at all?
So I would tell you that this lawsuit maybe represents the biggest wholesale shift and change to the industry. What's interesting is back in 2019 when this lawsuit was filed, I know I was one of the only voices screaming from the mountaintops to my real estate clients that this is something that you must take seriously. This law firm knew what they were doing.
Right.
This was a class action lawsuit. This was unlike other cases in the past where it might have been one individual seller that got squashed. It never saw the light of day. And I said to the real estate industry at large, now is the time to be prepared to recalibrate, that if this kind of goes the way it could go,
right,
you might find buyer agents devalued or having to change what they do and all these things. The craziest part about this, Pat, was the denial. I was really surprised of the rejection that some of the finest companies in the country just wrote it off.
Right.
Not going to happen, unconstitutional, will never see the light of day. And we now know that that decision was a very bad decision.
Right.
However, over these years, there's been some really smart ones who did recalibrate, and they are now the beneficiaries. So this lawsuit is crucial. If you are an agent and A, you don't understand it, B, you don't know how you're going to navigate as a result of it, you need to walk into your manager's or broker's office and you need to look them square in the eye and say, you need to help me understand on how we're going to navigate through this. And where is the opportunity? Because that's the thing, Pat.
Absolutely.
There is absolutely. This is a good day.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good day. It's a good day in this. Now, it's a bad day. I'll tell you who it's a bad day for.
Yeah.
Well, we know who it's bad. It's bad if you are an agent who never really took things seriously. You were a buyer's agent. You sold a home a couple of times to some friends. You never really kind of were full throttle. You kind of dabbled in, dabbled out. You never really knew the rules, the regs. You kind of did. That agent is probably going to be the first casualty of this business, which, by the way, you know who's going to be happy about that? All the other agents.
All the other agents.
Because the biggest complainer of bad buyer agents are listing agents. Right. So the reality is that may be a casualty, but that's good. That's good for the professional agent. Right. It's good for the professional. It's good for the full-time. And you know who it's really good for?
The buyers.
The consumers.
Yeah. Buyers
and sellers will be the winners as a result of this lawsuit. Now, again, this is a controversial topic. You mention this topic inside of real estate offices, you get anger, you get hostility, but that's all because change never is easy. And by the way, the real estate agent has been able to, let's just say the buyer's agent, for as long as we can remember, they've never had to do one thing: negotiate their commission.
Right.
It was done for them by the listing agent.
Absolutely.
Now, all of a sudden, now they're being told, you have to negotiate it with your buyer. You have to articulate your value and collect it. That's where there's panic in the streets. But listen, if you think you are worth tremendous value to your buyer, here's the good news: they'll pay it. But if you don't think they'll pay it, maybe that's not and you might need to find a new value proposition, different than the one you had. If you're a listing agent, you're probably not all that worried because you're already in safe harbor.
Right. Okay, perfect. So yeah, that's 100%. And change is always uncomfortable for many people, and with 1.6 million realtors out there, and sales from 6 million plus down to 4 million, there's maybe too many realtors in the business.
Well, listen, the real estate industry, and I saw this, the real estate business had a transition somewhere in history where success was measured by headcount. Real estate companies started to celebrate how many people they had in their company. And the reality is that's not what the celebration should be. How many of your individual agents are profitable and making money? Now, we know with certainty that the overwhelmingly large percentage of the 1.6 million realtors don't make any money.
Right.
I mean, I go into offices where there's 400 licensees on the wall and 350 barely make any money.
Right.
That in of itself is a reason for a lot of the inefficiency. So if this litigation changes that, I don't know if it will or it won't. Will buyer agents continue to pay their dues If now they can't, we don't know.
Right.
But generally speaking, it looks from my vantage point that it might be an evolution into a more efficient and maybe a more success way of doing things.
Right. And in every office, 20% of the realtors do, 80% of the business.
Which, when we say that, it's so upsetting to me. Why have it?
Right.
I mean, I've got clients where 80% of their agents do 80%. I mean, it
Right,
works. They don't measure their success on recruiting.
Right.
And recruiting has become this insatiable appetite that I think gobbled up quality. And I think leadership needs to kind of rethink what they do to hire. I mean, let's face it. Real estate, you can drive by almost any real estate office and see a now interviewing sign on the doorstep and think I caught it right. Literally, that now interviewing sign's been out there for 7 years.
Right.
But the bar is so low, it just, that decision, I think, is now being felt.
Right.
And like everything else, maybe the pendulum will swing the other way. And maybe the barrier to get into an office and maybe brokers' decisions on who they should hire will change.
Right.
and put guardrails in place to really think about, am I hiring somebody so they can be successful? Because I think that the culture of recruiting, in some respects, it's a very evil way to think. I mean, it's very sadistic to bring somebody into an office who you don't really know if they're going to make it, but you know what? Let's see if they make it, sink or swim. I mean, now you're wasting somebody's time, maybe their money. Maybe you would have been better off, based upon your assessment, because they didn't, let's say, have the money or time to invest, to say, listen, this is not the right career for you. You probably would have been doing the right thing for them.
Right.
And probably the right thing for yourself, your customers, and maybe the other agents that are giving it 150% effort every day.
Perfect. That was very good. So now, if somebody wants to know more about what you do and hear some more of that talk, because I know you could talk for 90
days. Oh, forget 90. Are you kidding me? 90 days.
Right. How would they get a hold of you? How can they learn more?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find. I mean, if you just kind of, Google my name, Scott Einbinder, you'll get two Scott Einbinders. There's a Hollywood producer,
right?
And you'll get myself. Okay, I'm not the Hollywood producer. So I'm pretty easy to find. I work under, a Scott Einbinder Consulting, Scott Einbinder Productions. I recently created something called the Scott Einbinder Effect.
Okay.
Which was a very different presentation. What I did is I took my seminar, which is normally me running around for 90 minutes, having fun and engaging with the audience. But what I did here is I hired a couple of actors.
Okay.
And during my presentation, what I did is I stopped and then had the actors role play.
Right.
Both in a funny way and then in my taught way on how to prospect for listings, on how to engage at the front door, on how to overcome seller objections. So an audience saw for the first time not just the speaker running around talking, but actual real live portrayals of how to do it. And the response from the attendees was overwhelming. Never saw a training presentation like this. Not only was it fun and all that stuff, but it really gave a different perspective. Because people taking notes or recording, but to actually watch it and see it was a different experience. So this is the Scott Einbinder Effect. We're doing these in markets around the country, and I'm sure somewhere in the social media world, those will learn more about it.
Great, and we'll post your website and your contact information. So thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure.
Really good information.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And that's the Real Estate Show with Pat Lopez. Be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Instagram and subscribe below. I have some great guests coming up, just like Scott. And be sure to leave a comment. Tell me some ideas, some things you want to see, good or bad. Let me know, because this show is everything real estate, no limits. Hope you enjoyed the show and have a great day.
Thank you.